Okay, we're gonna move on to our last speaker for this session. And this is another North American from Canada, Kleinsasser. He is an educator from Manitoba, Crystal Spring community. And he is going to tell us about a grassroots project that they are launching back there, which I find very, very important and fascinating. Ian, the stage is yours.
Thank you, Jason. So my lecture or talk will be it's called Preserving Hutterite Heritage, Collaborative Efforts and the Emergence of a Cultural Archive. This is a project that I've been involved in the last number of years, establishing a Hutterite archive primarily focused on telling the North American, so the younger story of the Hutterites, but definitely not limited to that. But for myself personally, I see that as a pressing, very pressing need. So this report, first of all, I want to start by expressing sincere gratitude to the Mennonitische Geschichtsverein Forschungsstelle Weierhof for the invitation that has facilitated the current gathering. The symposium entitled Exploring Hutterite Haban Heritage, Advancement in Research and Scholarship represents a significant occasion for the convergence of both the Old World Hutterite heritage and the New World or North American heritage or Hutterite heritage. Moravia, given its profound historical significance to the Hutterite culture and narrative, serves as an appropriate venue for this meaningful event. So I want to start by also giving a little bit of a historical context. So since departing from Moravia in 1622, the Hutterites have faced forced migration, ongoing upheaval, and repeated efforts to reestablish themselves across 2 different continents and 2 different countries. This journey has taken the Hutterites from Moravia to Hungary, Russia, Ukraine, the United States, and finally to Canada. Despite the extreme challenges faced during this period, Hutterite scribes and scholars somehow managed to maintain a relatively consistent record of their history. However, by the time the Hutterites arrived in the Canadian prairie, the activities of the Hutterite scribes noticeably diminished. And I believe there are historical reasons why that happened. But so from approximately the 1930s onward, most documentation regarding the Hutterites was produced not by Hutterite scribes, but by their Mennonite counterparts. So the contribution of historians such as John Horsch, Robert Friedman, John Hostetler, Bern Langen, Karl Peters, Victor Peters, Ziegelschmidt, Stefan Volkan, and Werner Pakul are acknowledged with gratitude. The contribution of these Mennonite scholars are substantial. However, it is essential to recognize that the strong support and assistance from Hutterite leaders and educators facilitated their research and publication. This collaborative effort included the contributions of Grassroots elder Elias Walter, who published a manuscript of songs during this time, so early 1900s. Paul S. Gross and Schmiedeleut elders like Prediger Joseph Kleinsasser from Milltown, Peter Hofer, Gemsvalley, Jacob Kleinsasser from Crystal Spring, and Reverend John Hofer from Gemsvalley, Josh Hofer from Gemsvalley, played an important role in these scholars being able to tell the Hutterite story of North America. Today, we gratefully acknowledge and commemorate the foundational work of these and many other Hutterite leaders and community members whose efforts were instrumental in keeping alive and passing on the vision of Hutterite research and writing, Hutterites researching and writing these narratives, so the Hutterite narrative. So the emergence of the Hutterite Heritage Archive, a monumental step in preserving our narrative. Despite lacking formal training, Hutterite leaders and lay people, such as those mentioned earlier, recognize the importance of collecting historical documents and artifacts for the benefit of both current and future generations. The period from the 1920s to roughly 2000 is marked by the emergence of small private collections consisting mainly of documents, letters, codices, historical images, and artifacts. While some documents and even codices were shared and copied among individuals, no formal effort were made to consolidate these individual collections into a single repository. Provincialism and political tension among the three Leut significantly hindered the establishment of a central archive. In fact, Hutterites were often more inclined to share historical documents and collections with Mennonites or non-Hutterite scholars than they were to share them with other Hutterite researchers. A significant drawback of this practice was the tendency for these micro-archives or personal collections to become dispersed following the demise of the individuals associated with them. And I just want to add one little thing, that the idea of personal connections or things owned by individuals. In a Hutterite community, the concept of private property exists in sort of a nuanced manner. In principle, Hutterites do not own anything individually. Rather, they hold all possessions in common. However, there is one notable exception. Items like books or heritage manuscripts are viewed as personal property. For instances, old manuscripts such as the älteste Chronik der Hutterische Brüder, which is housed in the Bonhomme Gemeinde in South Dakota, is considered to belong to the members of that particular community, or even to a specific family. There have been several attempts to relocate this chronic to another community for safekeeping, but all such efforts have been rejected by the Bonhomme community. So just give that as an example to highlight the complexity of trying to work and bring some of these collections together. It was common also at this time for family members to request old books or artifacts collected by the individuals as an Andenken or memento, resulting in the dispersal and even loss of important documents and collections. So when a person passed away, people would come and say, hey, can I have a book? I want to have this old book to remember Grandpapa. And so in this way, these collections that had been collected over a lifetime would disperse again. So Hutterite leaders and educators became increasingly aware of the ongoing risk of losing essential historical materials and begin to explore ways to reverse the trend. So on September 15, 2018, a cohort of about 5 educators, Prediger and amateur historians convened at the Hutterite Book Center at Baker Gemeinde in Manitoba, Canada. The purpose of this meeting was to discuss the establishment of a Hutterite Heritage Foundation dedicated to the promotion of Hutterite heritage and culture. At this meeting, the participants worked to clarify a mission statement for the Hutterite Heritage Foundation. It read, the vision of the Hutterite Heritage Foundation is to empower people to know, understand, and appreciate the Hutterite culture and faith heritage, and to enable them to establish a connection between its diverse parts with a promising future. Later that day, the same group engaged with additional representatives from other Schmiedeleut communities, forming an ad hoc committee aimed at preliminary efforts to commemorate the permanent settlement of Hutterites in Canada. And at this gathering, we made a very deliberate effort to try to include people, Hutterites from both conferences in Manitoba, which has been sort of a very key point in the development of the work that we're doing, is trying to include Hutterites from every Leut, from all the different Leuts, and that the work that we're doing promotes ongoing dialogue and efforts to bring people together. So the initial meeting laid essential groundwork for the significant future endeavors of Hutterite academics. After more than a century in exile, Hutterites have finally begun a new journey, one focused on reclaiming their narrative. Hutterite scholars are once again taking up the pen to share the Hutterite story from their own context and perspective. So the mission and vision of the Hutterite Heritage Foundation. These early steps, albeit modest, have proven critical in facilitating and establishing commemorative events that celebrated the ongoing settlement of Hutterites in Canada and North America. The Hutterite Heritage Foundation team achieved some of the objectives included, and I'm going to share 4 of the major topics or event things that came out of this small meeting. So one was the creation of a Hutterite historical lecture series. So at the time we realized in order to do commemorative events, we needed to start a series of lectures that celebrate our own history, and that was aimed largely even at our own people, at Hutterites, and then not only, but also aimed at bringing this information to a larger audience. The series that was created at this time, later designated the Jacob D. Mendel Lecture Series, commenced with the inaugural lecture taking place on June 1, 2019. And I believe Astrid was also invited to do one of the lectures in the subsequent years. So Hutterite, the second thing we discussed was Hutterite history education. To foster historical interest among Hutterite high school students, Kenny Wallman and Jesse Hofer collaborated to develop a course for teaching Hutterite history. The publication for God's Truth, a Hutterite history reader, which is a document with primary texts that are used by Hutterite high school students, was then also published during this time. The third point is the promotion of Hutterite literature. So we advocated for the publication of narratives and histories by Hutterite writers and historians. Alongside the Jacob D. Mendel lecture series, the book Navigating Tradition and Innovation, essays commemorating the permanent settlement of Hutterites in Manitoba, was published, featuring essays from Hutterite scholars that commemorated the permanent settlement of Hutterites in Manitoba. Over the past 2 decades, more than 20 books related to Hutterites have been published. A notable portion of these are children's books, some of which are written in the Hutterite dialect. Additionally, a significant achievement has been the creation of an orthography for Hutterisch by Linda Mendel. And finally, the establishment of a Hutterite Heritage Archive. The pressing need for Hutterite Heritage Archive was recognized as a vital source for both current and future Hutterite historians and scholars. While most of the attendees at this initial meeting recognized the critical need for such an institution, they did not believe it feasible to establish one within the next 20 or 30 years. Consequently, the discussion centered on the establishment of small regional archives within individual Hutterite communities and how we can preserve those. But then sometimes things change and take you in directions, surprising directions. So in 2020, as the world was preparing to shut down due to the impending COVID-19 crisis, the Hutterite Historical Archive was quietly established. On August 6 of 2020, the Schmiedeleut Group 1 Hutterite Mutual Insurance Board invited the author and several others to a meeting in Winnipeg, Manitoba to discuss the construction of a Hutterite Heritage Archive. At that time, the Hutterian Brethren Mutual Board, which is an insurance company that the Manitoba colonies have established, had facilitated the purchase of a new building as the existing structure was no longer suitable. The board decided to allocate approximately 1,900 square feet of space for the construction of a Hutterite archive. This was a significant step toward realizing the vision of a dedicated space to preserve and share Hutterite history and culture. And it really, and I could say it took all of us who were involved in this by surprise. So it was sort of an interesting experience to be gifted a space before you sort of have a plan for what you want to do with that space. And so maybe a nod to to Sibylla's comment earlier. The first formal meeting of the Hutterite Heritage Archive took place on March 27, 2022, in Winnipeg, Manitoba. The Hutterite Archive Committee focused on assessing the potential collections that could be transferred to the archive. Among the most significant collections was that of the late Schmiedeleut elder, Group 1 elder Jacob Kleinsasser, who dedicated his lifetime to collecting historical documents, reports, and manuscripts. Other smaller collections of important documents and church records exist and need to be collected. At the same time, it is essential to actively lay the necessary foundational work to ensure that the Hutterite Archive project thrives and flourishes for generations to come. So navigating the path ahead, I sort of looked at what are some of the challenges that we face as an organization. So looking forward, the Hutterite Heritage Archive will encounter significant challenges that necessitate careful and thoughtful consideration. First, merging diverse collections. A coherent process must be developed to effectively consolidate existing micro-archives and individual collections into the Hutterite Heritage Archive. Training and archival process. There's a need to identify opportunities for further training in archival processing to enable the next generation to perpetuate this vital work. And for me personally, that was sort of one of the really important themes, because in past, when I look back over the past, there was this lack of a vision to how do we pass this on to the next generation? How do we begin the work and let the next generation build on this? So these small region archives were in a sense very destructive, because they were, I think, again, to Sibylla's point, they were an incursion of individualism into the system. And so we have to have a vision of, that what we're trying to build is something that will help future generations of Hutterites understand their heritage, understand where they came from, and why things are the way that they are. And so for myself personally, that is sort of one of the very important visionary aspects of this. Provincialism and political tensions are still very strong, a problem that we have to overcome. As some of you may realize or know, that there are 4 different groups of Hutterites, and well, to put it mildly, we just don't get along with each other all the time as good as or seldom do. We've always had our differences in the past, ever since leaving Russia. Interestingly, we don't know why. It's one of these strange aspects of our history that is sort of mystery. We don't know why we left Russia in 3 different groups. On a practical reason, yes, but why they already divided into 3 different distinctive conferences is sort of a mystery, but that plagues us to this day. So any attempt to try to bring together all the materials under one archive has to somehow navigate those tensions. And that's why we've tried to be very deliberate from the beginning to try to invite as many different people from different Leut to come. So it's sort of open. This archive itself is actually not in a Hutterite community. It's going to be located in Winnipeg, and that is just another attempt at trying to make it accessible, but also to free it from, let's say, I would say a simple way to say it would to free it from any political arguments that it might, if it's let's say located in one specific colony, it then tends to come under the authority of that community. And so that there's a little bit of a problem there. So we're deliberately trying to navigate around some of these problems, again, just with in mind to try to keep this open and accessible to all Hutterites and also to non-Hutterite researchers as well eventually. So, and one final, I think, major challenge is the integration of contemporary technologies for digitizing or digital archiving, cataloging, accessing historical materials. Accessing these materials for most Hutterites is problematic because of the geography of Manitoba. So the colonies are spread out many different distances, very far distances. And so one of I think one of our main focuses will have to be in trying to digitize as much of the material as we can, and then finding a suitable platform. That's maybe we can get Paul in here to do some design work for us. To sort of how do we disseminate, how do we make this accessible to researchers all over the world? And one suggestion we would have is, or we're exploring, is to approach the Mennonite MAID program. They have sort of an online database program that's already functioning. So I think we're sort of having some early discussions about what that would look like. So outreach and education is also sort of a final thing. Promoting awareness of the significance of preserving the Hutterite heritage and educating community members about their historical narrative will require a sustained effort and an innovative strategy. So how do we, having a vision and being passionate about something is one thing. How do you pass that on? How do you pass on a passion and something like that to the next generation? And that is, I think, the critical point, right? How do we do that? How do we get the next generation excited about their story? And partly, I think the answer is being aware of that history. So starting teaching Hutterite history in the high school, at the high school level, incorporating the archives into that study. And I think we're already doing that, making resources available and having our students go back to the sources, start asking questions about these sources. And so this is going to be one of the greatest challenges, but also I think one of the greatest, I guess, or the best way I see of moving forward with this and making sure that the next generation is empowered and sees the vision and is able to pursue this, and so that this just the work we're doing just doesn't fall by the roadside, so to speak. So addressing these challenges will be essential for the Hutterite Heritage Archive to thrive and successfully preserve the Hutterite heritage for future generations. In conclusion, the Hutterite journey from Moravia to their present-day communities in North America is a testament to their resilience and commitment to preserving their unique heritage. The establishment of the Hutterite Heritage Foundation and the Hutterite Heritage Archive mark a pivotal moment in this ongoing narrative, as it not only honors the past, but also actively engages current and future generations in understanding and valuing Hutterite culture. Through collaborative efforts and commitments of community members and the support of scholars from various backgrounds, we can ensure that the rich tapestry of Hutterite history is not only preserved, but celebrated. As we forge ahead, it is essential to foster a spirit of cooperation and inclusivity, empowering individuals to contribute to this collective effort and safeguard our heritage for years to come. Thank you.
Yeah.
You want to show some more slides?
Oh, I thought you were paging through those. So I guess I can just show, there's some preliminary, sorry for the graininess of them, but some just pictures of the actual facility that we've established. It's a beautiful facility with lots of room for growth. So this is a bit of blueprint. Let me see, it's actually the layout is slightly wrong here. So we have basically a big section of sliding archival shelving where we're going to house most of the private collections or the collections. And there's also a study area. And then we have additional rooms that were added for just storage of documents. So yeah, I think this is the better layout, right? I can't quite see this one here. So I believe there's archival shelving on the side here or in the back. Kenny, does this look right? Yeah, I'm just seeing the orientation is wrong for me. Yeah. So we have basically archival, a large part of it is going to be just storage and storage space for documents, which is something as the world moves more and more toward digitization, you're weighing, the value of physical space. But for me, still, I want these physical documents. I think they're still incredibly important. So, oh yeah. So here we see the spacing. Some of our young future helpers helping carry stuff in, and then some of the collections that we're slowly starting to build.